Welcome to the Frog Lake First Nation Recreation Center. It has basketball and volleyball courts, a weight room, and recording studios. Right next door is home to the Frog Lake T-Birds hockey team. Over 1,000 people can sit here and watch the games. This was all built 1 year ago, with money from the oil and gas industry. Clifton Cross is the director of the Recreation Center. He used to work here as a volunteer before the oil industry came to the community. Now, this is his full-time job.
It's a lot of hockey, a lot of community events, tons and tons of stuff, tons of work, tons of hours.
He says before these facilities were available, community members were not as active. Diabetes rates were high, and so was the suicide rate.
Back before oil and gas, we did have a lot of depression. We did have a lot of addiction problems, even more so than now. I think that's calmed down. The light at the end of the tunnel is closer now.
That light comes from a controversial source in North America, oil and gas. Frog Lake, a community in northern Alberta of about 3,300 people, has been producing oil since the 1980s. For this First Nation, oil and gas are here to stay, and many people here think that's a good thing. People like Owen Stanley. He is a carpentry student at the Portage College here in town. They are building homes throughout the community for families that would otherwise live in overcrowded homes. A large portion of the funding for this program comes from the oil industry.
It feels good to accomplish something and to know that you're going to build something for someone to live in.
Over the years, the number of students going to school has tripled. And aside from these houses, another 150 homes are popping up throughout Frog Lake, ready to house large families. New rodeo and powwow grounds are also available to community members. Before this was built, it wasn't very often that Frog Lake would host powwows. Now, up to 1,000 dancers come here every summer. In the past 15 years, Frog Lake First Nation has produced as many as 10,000 barrels a day. Drilling has slowed down in the last few years due to low oil prices, but the CEO of Frog Lake Energy Resource Corporation says that's picking up again.
There's been in excess of $300 million in royalty payments just to the nation itself because of this activity, not counting the revenues that we've generated as a company, which is in the 50 million plus.
Connie's Oilfield Lease and Maintenance is the only Indigenous-owned cleanup crew in Frog Lake. They are on call during any operation.
This is how I survive. This is how I feed my little family. There isn't any other source of income.
For the community, dealing with oil and gas is like walking a tightrope. How to be successful without destroying the land. Band counselor William Quinney says industry has done many great things for Frog Lake, but it comes with a cost. He says many people living in boom conditions get used to the lifestyle, and when the oil economy goes bust, there can be a lot of suffering.
When things are flourishing, the oil was at $120 a barrel. Everybody in the oil industry was, they had the big trucks and the big skidoos and the quads and the trailers, and there's always a downturn. There's always a downturn, and nobody plans for that.
Another downside? There aren't many other options.
Not everybody wants to put coveralls on. Not everybody wants to get their hands dirty with oil, and not everybody wants to drive a big truck.
Connie SALIWONCZYK started her business 16 years ago. She says she wants to make sure her land is maintained.
We ate off the wildlife. We picked our own berries, and because I see hands-on what happens out there in our land.
Spills happen roughly once every 2 months. SALIWONCZYK says the majority happens while transporting oil by trucks or train, and they are mostly caused by human error. She says it isn't very often that her company gets called for a pipeline spill.
I realize in the news there's a lot of pipelines bursting, but how often is that?
As an elder, I've had to ask forgiveness from Mother Earth for a long time now. For some of the practices that we do
Melvin Abraham is an oil field liaison for Frog Lake Energy Resources. He is also a respected elder born and raised in the community.
There is really no safe way to move oil, to transport oil. If you transport it by train, you could have a derailment. All of a sudden, you have an environmental disaster in your hands.
Quinny says oil wells throughout the community prevent hunting and gathering.
We're First Nations people. We're stewards of the land. We're like the first environmentalists. If you look at a topographical map of Frog Lake, oil wells everywhere, and it's not a pretty sight. It's become part of our landscape.
But Alexander SALIWONCZYK, manager of Connie's oil field maintenance, says environment is top priority.
I think there is a lot of negativity towards the oil industry and just the damage it's having, the effect it's having, right? But in all honesty, I mean, I don't really see it out there, you know? I.e. planting more trees, you know, planting more grass.
Abraham says when companies propose oil exploration on Frog Lake, elders are invited to assess the sites. The process can only go ahead with an elder's approval.
Some of these elders are historians from this area. They know about this area, which helps. A lot of these elders know about herbs and plants, so for medicinal purposes.
Back at the rec center, Clifton Cross is planning more activities for youth to get involved in. He says by mid-2017, a new radio station will be up and running to broadcast T-Bird hockey games.
And that's just from dreaming big. We try each year to get further along in that dream. Sky's the limit. We just got to keep on top of it and keep them coming out.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Frog Lake First Nation.